Welcome back, guys, to Ace Attorney Investigations 2, Prosecutors Gambit, where last episode, a visitor to Miles Edgeworth's detention center cell began a long game of mind chess as we tried to pull information out of Excelsior's winner, now safe in the knowledge of his corrupt nature. The next day, Edgeworth was called in front of the Committee for Prosecutorial Excellence, and after focusing only on Kay's innocence and not himself, refusing a bribe, has asked for the committee's view of the case. Miss Ringer attended the auction as a potential buyer, but the red raincoat was one of the items up for sale. So our assumption is that after winning and paying for it, she left the auction with her purchase. The only exit from the storeroom was, of course, the hatch leading up onto the roof. After she'd emerged onto the viewing platform, that's when Miss Ringer was attacked by Miss Faraday. Shortly thereafter, her flame went out, and thus concludes the committee's view of the case. The raincoat was on offer that night. Is that really true? We believe so, yes, but there was a mannequin. You remember the failed assassination attempt on the president of Zhangfa, I assume? The raincoat is a piece of evidence from that case. It should, of course, have remained safely under lock and key in the appropriate facility. But our inquiries revealed that it did in fact go missing under mysterious circumstances. And wound up in the auction along with everything else. That makes sense, I suppose. Wonderful work, Verity. Just wonderful. Crystal clear as ever. You flatter me, sir. Now, Mr. Edgeworth, perhaps you could save us all some time and simply admit defeat? I'll do no such thing, thank you very much. Very well. It's good to know that you still have some fight in you. It is. Why? Come to think of it, she said some strange things when she visited me this morning, too. What exactly is she up to? Yeah, that is the question. Miss Ringer attended the auction as a potential buyer. Hold it! In other words, a member of the committee was actively involved in the illegal evidence trade. It is unfortunate. I don't know what else to say. And of course, we'll be looking into any such activities just as soon as this hearing is over and done with. I commend your decision to pursue the matter further, Mr. Chairman. Oh, don't be silly, Verity. It's the least we can do, really. Not that it's any of your business, Miles. Not anymore. If only you'd remained a prosecutor. But you didn't. Now, if we're quite done making an old man cry over this whole sad affair... Very well. Allow me to continue. The red raincoat was one of the items up for sale. Hold it! So the raincoat really was one of the auction lots. That's correct. I believe it originally belonged to a Mr. Shelley de Killer. Considering its status as a piece of evidence, it's the only logical conclusion. It's from when he made his attempt on the president's life. There was an unexplained mannequin standing amongst the other items on sale. It could well have been used to display the coat prior to the auction. Do we know how the items were being smuggled in? That is still under investigation, and is entirely unrelated to the matter at hand. Especially considering that you will soon officially be a prosecutor no longer, Mr. Edgeworth. It sounds like the outcome of this hearing is a foregone conclusion. No surprises there. My personal circumstances aren't important right now. Please continue, Your Honor. As I was saying, the raincoat was one of the items up for sale. So our assumption is that after winning and paying for it, she left the auction with her purchase. Hold it! Why did she leave so soon after making her purchase? Because of the auction house rules. Winning bidders are expected to pay for their items immediately. Miss Hart told us pretty much the same thing. Miss Ringer, having paid for the raincoat, probably left immediately afterwards in accordance with the rules. The only exit from the storeroom was, of course, the hatch leading up onto the roof. Hold it! Miss Ringer was a member of the committee. Could she not have left the committee chamber via the main door? While the auction was still underway, that would risk exposing his existence to those outside the trusted circle of attendees. Also would risk exposing her as a member of the committee. Given that Miss Hart found out about it, I think his existence is already well and exposed. The rules of the auction stated that attendees were to enter and leave via the hatch in the roof. Miss Ringer had no reason not to follow those rules. And given where the murder took place, we know that she must have done so. Ah. Ting noise. After she emerged onto the viewing platform, that's when Miss Ringer was attacked by Miss Faraday.
Hold it!
But why? What possible motive could Kay have had? That is exactly what we are hoping to establish in our upcoming interviews with Miss Faraday. Coercive interrogation after the fact, something you seem to specialize in. If the murderer knew that the attendees would all be leaving via the hatch, then the roof would have been the perfect place to lie in wait. So as I was saying, after she'd emerged onto the viewing platform, that's when Miss Ringer was attacked. So we're saying, of course, the murder took place up top, whereas we know there's a ton of bloodstains in the storeroom at this point in time. Shortly thereafter, her flame went out, and thus concludes the committee's view of the case.
Hold it!
What are we going to argue against here? Because it looks like a present. Her flame went out. The flame of her life, Mr. Edgeworth, though perhaps her flame was stolen from her, is more apt.
Objection!
But the candelabrum that extinguished her life was one of the auction lots, meaning Kay had no way of getting a hold of it to begin with.
Overruled!
Miss Faraday could not have lain in wait for the victim without knowing of the storeroom's existence. She could easily have snuck down the ladder and stolen it while the auction was underway. If only we knew where the candle holder was during the auction. That would surely clear the matter up, no? Well, live review. Sadly, we don't have anything that could tell us much on that front at the moment. Forgive me, sir. This is something we are hoping to establish through further investigation. Well, isn't that a shame, Miles, my boy? It seems this line of inquiry is something of a dead end then, isn't it? So their theory is that the victim and a killer met on the roof, and that's where the murder took place. In other words, this assumes the viewing platform was the scene of the crime. But is that really the case? I thought I had evidence that clearly shows the story of what happened that night. Time to double check. Well, if we double check, I'll press present. We're looking at basically blood stains all around. Elevator blood, committee chamber blood. Did we not have an evidence for, like, the fact that... Oh, okay, we got the bloody hand here. It's just like the leaving of the place to say like the murder had already been committed, the crime had already been committed before that she left for the viewing platform at this point in time. But we only got like elevator blood as a thingy. Not a blood that indicates traversal, so it's probably the picture. But what I want to do here, we want to contest the leaving of the storeroom. So it's either this one or this one, but I don't know which one. The only exit from the storeroom was, of course, the hatch leading up onto the roof, which we know. That's more of a statement about what it was. After she emerged onto the viewing platform, that's when Miss Ringer was attacked by Faraday. So is this a case of attacking the statement of when she was attacked? It's either or. We could take a penalty. But we got to show that she was very bleedy murdery before she left.
Objection!
Very law type technical speak I used there. Maybe you can clear something up for me, Judge Gavèlle. But what is Miss Hart doing here at this hearing? She is an eyewitness. I thought it would be obvious. Well, you're not even using her testimony, are you? Well, now, I ain't really an eyewitness. More of an ear witness, I guess. She's not exactly the most confidence-inspiring choice to help you make your case, is she? I like to think I choose my allies a little more carefully than you, Mr. Edgeworth. Then you should question them more thoroughly, because there's something she hasn't told you. Take a look at this. It's a photo taken by Miss Hart. Yes, in the storeroom, correct? What of it? Eyes have? According to your theory, the murder occurred up on the roof. But according to Miss Hart's testimony, she happened to witness the entire incident unfold in the storeroom. Just before she took this picture. Wait! You're saying Gavèlle got it? Wrong. That's exactly what I'm saying. What? Miss Hart, if I may confirm your account of the events you witnessed that night, you saw the person in the picture, correct? I sure did, clear as day, with my own 2 eyes to boot. And what were your impressions at that point? My impressions? This right here is a scoop of the century, something like that. Yes, that makes sense. I was hoping more for your impressions of the person in question. Oh, that there's a walking meal ticket. Seriously? Just my little joke. No need to look at me like I'd done sat on your lunch. Oh, red raincoat, right? Why, I took one look and I thought, that's our perp right there. And therein lies the rub. For Miss Hart to have thought such a thing means that the murder occurred. Oh, Mr. Edgeworth, when will you learn to use your words? If it's an explanation of the facts you require, you need only ask, you know. What do you mean? I assume you're about to raise the issue of the voices Miss Hart heard. Voices that may be unrelated.
Objection!
Unrelated? You can do better than that. Was one of the voices Miss Hart heard really even Miss Ringer's? You're kidding me, right? Them folks was talking crime-related turkey or my name ain't lot of danged heart. Ah, but did you hear them clearly? Well, can't rightly say for sure, but... I can't rightly say nothing, and you know it. They was using voice changes. I done told you all that. Precisely. Miss Hart heard voices, but those voices were disguised. Which means we cannot even be certain that whatever she did over here had anything to do with the murder.
Objection!
You don't need to yell objection in order to sigh at me, Mr. Edgeworth. It seems I overestimated you, Judge Gavèlle. Nonsense. Verity's the best of us, my boy. The very best. And yet she believes that what Miss Hart heard might not have had anything to do with the murder. Even supposing that that's the case, doesn't prove the murder didn't happen in the storeroom. The incident happened before the victim was able to go up to the roof. That much we can say for certain. Yeah, I was wondering where we would go with all of that. That's not what my line of, presenting evidence and objecting was in the first place, all of that little bit of fluff. And I can tell you why. This proves that the incident happened before the victim went up to the roof. Oh, I was going to say, there's a blood stain here and here. But actually, I'm probably meant to show this. We initially thought that the person in the red raincoat was the culprit. Yes, because Miss Hart said as much. Indeed, she told us about the blood she saw on this person's hand, and I doubt many people would have thought differently given her testimony. Ergo, if this person is the killer, then the blood we see would be from when they attacked the victim. But knowing what we know now, that this person is in fact the victim, it recontextualizes everything. The presence of the blood still shows that the picture was taken after the attack, but now it tells us something very important about the victim too. This picture tells us that the victim... survived the original attack. Managed to get quite far away, in fact. There's no doubt in my mind that the victim was attacked in the storeroom. But here we are photographic evidence of her standing upright and alive, albeit with a bloody hand. This can only mean that Miss Ringer survived the attack. Enough strength to climb a ladder too. The blood on her hand is from the wound she had sustained. What are you talking about? Who dies from a hand wound? The wound wasn't on her hand, Mr. Winner. I imagine she'd used her hand to try and staunch a wound. That's right. While it's impossible to tell from this angle, the victim was already mortally wounded here. Oh, well, that certainly would change things, wouldn't it? It very much would. Not least by making it absurd to suggest that Kay was the attacker. Her encounter with the victim happened after this picture had been taken. After the victim had already been attacked and was in critical condition. I put it to you that all Kay witnessed was the victim finally succumbing to her wounds. That would have been quite the coincidence. It's a textbook case of wrong place, wrong time, I'd say. You seem to be forgetting a rather important fact, Mr. Edgeworth. Well, that or pretending to not remember it. What? What fact am I forgetting? I think it's time to wrap things up. Don't you, Verity? Put the boy out of his misery. Dad, Gavèlle works for me! Why do you keep giving her orders? That's my job! You really are a total and utter embarrassment. I'm not! I hate to break it to you, but you both are. Go to it, Gavèlle! Put Edgeworth out of his misery. As you wish. What you're forgetting? What am I forgetting? Miss Ringer's body was found with 3 wounds in its chest, correct? And we all know what those wounds are from, don't we? That's right, they're from when she was stabbed in the chest by a 3-armed candelabrum. I doubt anyone could survive such grave wounds. If you care to read the coroner's report, I'm sure you would change your tune. Nicely done, Gavèlle! Now Edgeworth will have to make several objections. Yes, I'm afraid I will. What? Why? Weren't you listening? Oh, I was listening. Very carefully, in fact. Hence my objections. Come on! Why do you always have to undermine me? That's never my intention, I assure you. It isn't? Because you do it so well to yourself every single time already. Of course it isn't. Yes, I knew that, because I'm... Please, Eustace, just stop, for goodness sake. You've already embarrassed me enough. Huh? What do you mean, Dad? What you're forgetting. What I'm forgetting indeed. By the way, what is it in the coroner's report again? Time keeps on slipping. You bring it up, so it's obviously going to be an important part of it. Where is it? Where? Oh, it's in picture form. Cause of death is a set of 3 puncture wounds on the left side of the chest inflicted by a candle holder. Victim also suffered a head injury post-mortem. Other remarks. Prominent burn mark on back of victim's right hand. There is nothing in there that says about puncturing the heart. Cause of death, but didn't mention the heart. Miss Ringer's body was found with 3 wounds in his chest.
Hold it!
3 wounds. That can't have been pleasant. Yes. Which is why we must see that the perpetrator of this cruel act pays for their sins. Don't listen to her, Kay. She's just trying to scare you. If we could please continue on, Judge Gavèlle. Very well. As I was saying, there were 3 wounds. And we all know what those wounds are from, don't we?
Hold it!
I do, but perhaps we should ask Mr. Winner. He does, I'm sure. Don't you, Eustace? Who, me? Oh, you bet I do. I know this case inside out. Who does he think he's fooling? Eustace, my boy, make an old man happy and at least glance at the coroner's report, would you? Sure, let's see. Yada yada, 3 punch wounds, blah blah, candle holder. No way! That's what they used? Crazy! Precisely. The wounds were inflicted just as Eustace says. Yes, but there's nothing that indicates instant death. That's right, they're from when she was stabbed in the chest by a 3-armed candelabrum.
Hold it!
And you're sure the stabs to the chest were the cause of death? There's no doubt about that. The coroner did say that. None. One of the spikes of the candelabrum even pierced the victim's heart. And unless you mean to call Dr. Hurst's professional opinion into question, we can only treat that as fact. The coroner's opinion backing up my own winning ones. Now that's what I call a flawless victory. Well, I'm certainly not about to ignore the coroner's findings. Hey, what about my findings? You can't just ignore them. But if the cause of death really was the puncture wounds to the chest from the candelabrum, that would seem to contradict one of the pieces of evidence we've gathered. He's not just ignoring my findings, he's ignoring me! Do something, Gavèlle! As you wish. At the very least, I will ensure that he cannot ignore my own conclusions. I doubt anybody could survive such grave wounds. Yes, but again, like, literally from the start, like looking at the thing, it didn't say about piercing the heart. And if it's not pierced the heart, then death is not instantaneous or near instantaneous.
Hold it!
But the victim may not necessarily have died instantly. I think we can say that much at least. Perhaps, but she would surely not have lived for longer than a few moments either. So, there are people who could survive even if you stab them in the chest? Sure, there might be, and there might not be too. So, which is it? Trust me, there are not, and in case you're still tempted to believe there might be. If you care to read the coroner's report, I'm sure you would change your tune. That's why I read it, and then I was like, well, there's nothing that hints at instantaneous death.
Hold it!
Cause of death is a set of 3 puncture wounds on the left side of the chest inflicted by a candle holder. Well done for reading, Mr. Edgeworth. That report forms the basis of my own conclusions. In other words, if I disprove what it says, I disprove your conclusions too. You have the strangest sense of humor, but I wouldn't mind seeing you try. However, before you do, I would advise you to read that report very carefully. After all, I am not interested in your opinions, only in solidly grounded deductions. This takes me back to when we first saw the candelabrum. And I was kind of like, well, we can see that it's obviously pierced in and there's blood, but there isn't so much the spurt that you'd expect. We have what looks to be stab wounds that didn't cause any drainage of blood or anything coming out this way. There was no pumping of, which would like probably denote like hitting an artery or anything when removed, or again the heart. You'd expect blood to be pooling in the bases where the wax would pool, but there's not. This looks like the post-mortem weapon, if anything. When you think about it. But she was definitely stabbed. Well, she definitely had blood on her hand. So was it a case of course, being stabbed and then having that blood there? Or was it her holding a head wound that was bleeding profusely? What's the order of this here? Very well, then you shall have my deductions. Mr. Edgeworth? Don't worry, Kay. Everything will be alright. I need to find something to prove that the victim was still alive and breathing immediately after the attack. If I can't, Kay's fate will be sealed. Miss Ringer's body was found with 3 wounds in its chest. What am I going with here, though? And we all know those wounds are from, don't we? That's right, they're from when she was stabbed in the chest by a 3-armed candelabrum. So there's something that allows us to say that the wound wasn't... The blood on the hand wasn't from the candelabrum. Oh, I can't examine this. It was worn by the victim whose fingerprints and blood were found on the hood. But this isn't punctured. Of course, we can't see from the back of this about the puncture. The blood was found on the hood. On the inside or the outside? I think we are definitely saying the order of things is different here. If it didn't puncture the heart, though, she'd be allowed to live. So is it just that this is completely wrong and a falsified coroner's report now, or not? I think this is our evidence because the red raincoat itself has not been punctured. You had to put it on afterwards and then go out. Oh, it's raining. I've been stabbed. I better not get water in my wounds. Am I going with, like... What are we contesting here? It's either this statement, when she was stabbed with a 3-armed candelabrum. Okay, actually, we're not combating the fact that Miss Ringer's body was found with 3 wounds in its chest. We are very much combating the fact that they're from when she was stabbed in the chest by a 3-armed candelabrum. I think we're saying that she wasn't.
Objection!
Simply. We pressed everything, after all. Chairman Winner, you know what this is, of course. The red raincoat. That's right, isn't it, Verity? Yes, sir. The one Miss Ringer was wearing. I warn you, Mr. Edgeworth, you will not be thanked for retreading old ground here. Well, I'm afraid I might have to regardless. Now then, if you'll answer me this, Judge Gavèlle. You told us that the victim's bloodstains were found on the coat, but do you remember where exactly they were found? Of course, they were found on the hood and... No! Nothing mentioned about the internal bit where the stab wound was. What's the matter, Verity? The hood and... Was blood found anywhere else on the raincoat? No, it was not. Doesn't that strike you as odd? The victim died of stab wounds to the chest. Wouldn't that lead one to expect to find bloodstains in that area? And yet, there was blood only on the hood. That's a glaring contradiction if I ever saw one. The head wound the victim suffered wasn't just some incidental injury. It was inflicted before the stab wounds to her chest. Perhaps you are correct. Perhaps the victim did sustain the head injury first. As you said, if she had been stabbed first, there should be blood in the chest area of the raincoat. Therefore, Miss Ringer cannot have been stabbed before the head injury had been inflicted on her. But even if we concede this point, that the head injury came before the chest wound, what difference would it make? How does it change our understanding of the case? That the murdering was done by a head wound? I'd say it changes things a great deal. In fact, it raises an even more fundamental contradiction. That is quite the bold claim, Mr. Edgeworth. I have to admit you have me intrigued. Perhaps you could show us this fundamental contradiction with some evidence. Which piece of evidence best demonstrates the contradiction the order of the injuries revealed? I mean, the fact that this entire report is just a lie. Pretty much.
Take that!
This is Dr. Hertz's preliminary findings, according to which the victim suffered a head injury post-mortem. But the order suggested by the bloodstains on the raincoat is... Exactly the opposite, yes. Bailiff, this court hereby subpoenas Dr. Hilda Hurst to the committee chamber with all due haste. Until she testifies, this case cannot be brought to a close. Yes, Your Honor. I'll go fetch her at once. Unfortunately, Dr. Hertz is a very busy woman. I doubt she will be able to come immediately. In the meantime, there is another important angle I would like to explore. Frankly, something has been bothering me about the person at the heart of this case. The so-called ringleader. Who exactly are they? Yes, good point. We never looked into that, Despite having been mentioned repeatedly in this hearing, we still don't know even the most basic facts that might help us uncover their identity. Well, Mr. Edgeworth, do you have any thoughts on the matter? We see nothing that might serve as clear evidence of the auctioneer's identity as of yet. But there is someone involved with the case that I can name. I suspect that at the very least, they might be able to point us in the right direction. And that's... Chairman Winner, I demand that you testify as to what you know. What? Are you crazy? Why would you accuse my dad? You would cast doubt on the integrity of the chairman of the committee? Do you understand the implications of such an act? I don't care who or what he is. We're talking about the truth here. And about a man who seems dead set on framing Kay at all costs. The mask, corsage, ticket stub, and everything else, the items Kay was carrying when she was found, they were deliberately placed in her possession somehow. By Chairman Winner himself. A shocking accusation, and one I find hard to believe. But for the sake of completeness, I must ask, why would he do such a thing? To case suspicion on Kay, of course. Or to place, really. Why else? I even managed to get him to say something to that effect. Chairman Winner, your rebuttal, please. I think the good chairman might be in shock. So what if I did? Did you hear me, dear boy? I said, so what if I did? You say you got me to admit as much, but where's your proof, huh? With no witnesses to speak of, your word alone is hardly enough to make an accusation like that stick. Or do you mean to tell us that you have something more to base your outburst on? He still has the arrogance he showed back at the detention center, and yet... Mr. Edgeworth, I am going to have to ask you to explain yourself. If that's all right, Mr. Chairman? Not at all. I'll be very interested to hear this for myself. I'm intrigued to learn where Miles might have gotten the idea that I'm some sort of criminal. Because you'll never find a more fine and upstanding citizen than myself. He has a lot of nerve acting all innocent like that. Very well. Let's start at the very beginning. The fact that the auction took place right here in this hallowed trial chamber is a point of suspicion. A location that should, by rights, only be accessible to members of the committee. Yes, they all have keycards to the room after all. Furthermore, these auctions seem to be held on a somewhat regular basis, and for that to be possible, there can be only one winning explanation. That's right, Mr. Winner. And the auctioneer is a member of the committee. No! What on earth is wrong now? What do I do, Dad? I played right into his hands! You did indeed, you utter nitwit. But Miles, my boy, you do realize that you've cast quite the wide net with your explanation. That's true. There are 11 members of the committee altogether. 10 given Miss Ringer's unfortunate passing. 10 potential suspects in total. Wait, aren't you on... You're on the committee. He's on the committee. There's still 11. I hold myself outside of the realms of suspicion, or do you hold him outside the realms of suspicion? Explain that. Well, it certainly isn't me. And it can't be the chairman. Can it? I'm counting right here. Oh, no, I'm not. 9. I'm counting wrong. You did count yourself. You have 11, so you've got a vote that's not matched, yes. Whoever it is, speak up right now. Calm down, all of you, please. Well, Miles, is that all the proof you've got against me? You're very quiet all of a sudden. But it's too late to back out now. You accuse the former chief prosecutor and current committee chairman of a crime. I would tell you to prepare for the worst. But there's no preparing for what you're about to face. More testimony? Argument? I'm not sure. Know Your Place is a great title. I guess we'll know our place next time on Ace Investigations 2, Prosecutors Gambit. Join me then as we continue on. And until then, I say, bye-bye.